Hey there, folks. Welcome to the Whitfield Report. I am your host, Sam Whitfield, broadcasting live from NGC TV studios here in South Florida. And I want to thank you so very much for joining me tonight. Let's see. Can everyone hear me? My audio levels are showing as a bit quiet right now. If the audio levels are quiet, I was noodling around with them a little bit beforehand, but let me know if they're too quiet or if you can hear them. Anyway, as I said, thank you for joining me tonight from NGC Studios here in South Florida. And it's great to be here. Contact info as usual. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @SamW_NGC, hashtag Whitfield Report, hashtag Sam Savages. You can follow me on Gab at Sam Whitfield. I'm also verified over there. TheSamWhitfield.com is my website, and facebook.com/Whitfield Report. Let's see. Alan says my mic is a little too low, so let me adjust the gain slightly here. Okay, hopefully that's a bit better. My audio levels are showing as being better on my end as well. Alright, folks, so I was going to cover this whole Feld entertainment thing that's been going on, but honestly, there's just so much information coming out about the whole Feld situation that I'm not really sure where to even start with that. So Royce from ROTC might be coming on tomorrow. We might have like a midday streamer, something to that effect, regarding the Feld entertainment stuff. But for tonight, I decided I would kick back a little bit and pay tribute to one of my heroes, Andrew Breitbart, who passed away 7 years ago yesterday. Breitbart was instrumental in me shaping the show into what it is today. As I've often mentioned, Rush Limbaugh was the one who sparked my interest in politics and podcasting because he, of course, is arguably the most successful talk show. So I heard Rush Limbaugh and figured, hey, he's someone who's trolling people on the air and, pissing off the left and spreading truth. So, Rush Limbaugh is also a huge influence, don't get me wrong. But it was really Breitbart who understood the way the internet works and the way social media works, and who really helped usher in the new age of conservative media. And he was absolutely successful at what he did, and just a brilliant man. He was taken way before his time, and I already see some comments, saying that he might have been killed or whatever. I'll get to my theories on what happened in a bit. But anyway, I want to start off. Tonight's show is mainly going to consist of clips of Breitbart. So, where to start? I want to start off playing a trailer to Hating Breitbart that came out. The movie came out back in 2012, shortly after he died. I've seen it at least 5 times. It's probably my favorite documentary. And I'm playing this for the newer millennial listeners who might not know who Breitbart is. This is a good crash course for those of you who want to know who Andrew Breitbart was and what he was all about. So this clip that I'm about to play is the behind the scenes special, so to speak, on the Hating Breitbart DVD. Since I have the digital copy, I obviously don't have the bonus features, so this was on the Hating Breitbart YouTube channel. This is kind of the 5-minute behind the scenes take, and it's a pretty good intro, and I figured I would play it to start the show off. Enjoy.
Over. All the racist comments are over.
Hey, what have I ever said that's racist? Ever.
What the left has stood for with political correctness is to try and get those with whom they disagree to shut up.
Andrew Breitbart, love him or hate him, his name demands a strong reaction.
We are a citizen journalism army, and we're going to take this country back.
Before his untimely death in 2012, he achieved a status few in his era could ever dream of: icon.
I don't think there's anybody who understands the way information flows in the modern world better than Andrew Breitbart.
Hating Breitbart is his story. A champion to some, a demon to others.
The scum that is this assassin Breitbart.
They had to hate him. They had to make people want to hate him, because if you hate him, if he's a villain, if he's a racist, sexist, bigot, homophobe, you don't need to think about the things that he's saying. You can just discount him.
My mere standing here is causing people to intimate that they want to be violent against me.
Filmmaker Andrew Marcus spent 2.5 years following Breitbart around the country.
We didn't know what the story was going to end up being. We just knew that following this guy was dramatic. We just felt compelled. We've got to document this moment now. The fact that it ended up blowing up into these major stories, I was surprised, but it wasn't unexpected.
Breitbart's whistleblowing quickly became national news.
One of the top amazing achievements that he had was the way that he rolled out the Acorn story and brought them down and exposed the media in the process.
James O'Keefe is a 25-year-old independent filmmaker. He came to me with this extraordinary video where he played the role of a pimp with a prostitute.
Let me make sure there's a code for it, okay?
A code for prostitution?
We might have to name it something else.
The Senate immediately moved to defund Acorn.
By the way, ladies and gentlemen, all of those Acorn videos are still online, and they're hilarious to watch. The very earliest Project Veritas videos. I thought about playing those on the show, but figured that I'd keep it mainly to Andrew. But yeah, they're worth watching for sure.
Andrew Breitbart despised bullies. And I think that in his mind, what the mainstream media was doing was bullying, and he just wasn't going to take it anymore.
They wanted to destroy him, and we decided to destroy them back.
This is guilt by association, you
Why are you so angry?
Because you try and destroy people's lives through innuendo. Innuendo. You're the most despicable life form I've ever seen.
Breitbart also made headlines when he posted videos that refuted a congressman's claims.
John Lewis decided to falsely accuse on purpose the Tea Partiers of hurling the N-word about 15 times.
He boldly stood up and said, I'm going to offer $100,000 if you can prove that there was one instance, not 15 times as they claimed, but one.
He said it was a page out of a time machine. We thought they were going to hurl rocks. What happened? They hurled the N-word. How many times? 15 times. 15 times, 15 people. It is a provable lie.
But how do you forget the most perfect story ever for Andrew Breitbart? The Wienergate story. The exposing of Anthony Weiner having
the original Carlos Danger, folks. Anthony Weiner. The jokes practically wrote themselves. This whole this whole scandal could have been like a Coen Brothers flick, honestly. And yeah, it was. This was the beginning of Idiocracy come to life.
Exposed himself. That was maybe the most perfect story ever.
I was checking my Twitter account and somebody sent me the retweet. I clicked on it, saw that it was coming from Congressman Weiner's account.
The photo showed a man from the waist down in his underwear.
CNN puts this Breitbart guy down and says the most outlandish thing about complete innocent people.
To be clear, the picture was of me, and I sent it.
As he scored one media victory after another, his list of enemies grew longer.
It's the people who hated him that are the most affected by him. Even in his death, they still tweet horribly angry things about Andrew Breitbart.
Everybody put your cameras up in the air. The new media is taking over where the old media failed.
He was a happy warrior. He was righteously indignant. He would spend all day fighting the battle and all night hanging out with friends. He had a tireless drive to fight this fight, but he also had a tireless drive to have fun.
Close set.
I hope that what people take away from this film is that the picture that the media paints about people is frequently nowhere near the truth about a person.
And you became the media. You took their jobs because they wouldn't do their jobs right. Thank you very much.
Alrighties, folks. So that was the start to our Andrew Breitbart special. Once again, thanks to those of you who are tuning in. And yeah, rest in peace, Andrew Breitbart. And hello to everyone in the chat. Hello to Hurricane Cat, Patience Zero, Critter Timber, of course. OJ's White Bronco. Love having OJ's White Bronco in the chat. One of the funniest people in a YouTube comment section ever. Of course, El Jefe managed to sneak across the border again, and of course, our favorite pirate, Jolly Roger, is here too. Right in time for the ship poster written. And if Andrew Breitbart had lived longer, I guarantee you that he would have been into memes and shit posting. Absolutely. Patience Zero, of course, is here. And Random Stuff PDX. I think I know who you are, so hello to you, sir or madam, or however you identify these days, since we now have to, ask for that. So, honestly, people have asked me how I discovered Andrew Breitbart at first, and honestly, at this point, I don't even remember exactly how I discovered them. I think a family friend of mine sent me a link to Breitbart.com and to one of Breitbart's articles, and Andrew's writing was both funny yet insightful, and I absolutely thought it was hilarious. I can tell you that the first time I heard Andrew Breitbart was on the old Dennis Miller radio show. Those of you who know me pretty well, and for those of you who may not know, also will probably know that Dennis Miller is probably one of my all-time favorite stand-up comedians. Not so much because, he's not someone who, tells overly crass jokes, at least not anymore. He did back during the 80s. But Miller is more of the intellectual pop culture reference guy, which is something I've always dug as a bit of a nerd myself. Hey Trolita. Speaking of intellectual nerds as well. Anyway, so this was one of the first times I heard Breitbart, which was on the Dennis Miller radio show, and I think it's absolutely hysterical. I still laugh out loud every time I hear this segment. So this was from when Breitbart was on the Dennis Miller radio show talking about his encounter with Occupy Wall Street. And I'm going to have to pause this and make commentary every once in a while, so I don't get dinged, even though I'm using unfair use. So this is from the Dennis Miller radio show from back in 2011, I believe. Let's roll the tape.
We are joined now by what I consider to be the contemporary rights Benjamin Franklin, Andrew Breitbart, founder and proprietor of Big Hollywood, Big Government, author of Righteous Indignation, Excuse Me While I Save the World, the estimable Andrew Breitbart. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Did Ben Franklin like fart jokes with his kids?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly why I drew the direct parallel.
Okay, thanks.
And he had the massive horn for Parisian women, so that also ties into it.
I've watched every Emmanuel, including the porn one.
Even Emmanuel in space before Obama dismantled the program.
Yeah.
Tucker Carlson.
The role of Emmanuel in space was to tell the space people that they were good at math.
Speaking of Emmanuel Creaky, just back from 3 days in the marsh with Tucker Carlson. How was that, and what were you doing?
I'm a sportsman, as everybody knows. And I watched a bunch of talented sportsmen shoot pheasant. I can still say that I'm a pacifist, inadvertently so.
You didn't hoist the
anarchist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, some people are saying that this is a little bit loud, and apologies for that if that's the case. Some of these audio clips, I do try and balance out the video on some of these beforehand, just to make sure that they're equally measured. But yeah, some of them are a bit loud, so if that's the case, turn down the volume. So anyway, oh damn, I think I lost my place, so I'll just play, and I think this is right where I was at, so continuing on.
Indignation. Excuse me while I save the world. Now, I've seen sound bites this morning from as disparate sources as Paul Ryan hinting that Obama is sort of, fanning class war, and Ed Schultz talking about how this all could lead to a civil war. Am I a pessimist, Andrew, to say that I never thought I'd say these words, but I sort of agree on Ed Schultz. I see the country lining up for something. I'm not saying it's a CGI battle in the movie Troy, but there's something coming down the path. What do you smell? You're out there in the streets.
Well, I've been following the same group of people. I went to Wisconsin twice, and I see we're literally finding the same people that were in Wisconsin, or when I was in a confrontation down at a protest organized by Van Jones, against the Koch brothers. We're finding the same people at all of the events that have happened since, President Obama came to power. I mean, this was the organizer, community organizer, and this is community organizing. You're witnessing community organizing, and each demonstration, whether it be a demonstration against me and Glenn Beck in Chicago, whether it be a demonstration against Scott Walker in Wisconsin, or whether you see them bringing in the anarchists and the socialists in a much more blatant fashion like they have, this is community organizing. About your pessimism, there's an interesting thing. In 1968, it was the corner of Haight and Ashbury, and there's a juxtaposition here, the intersection of scary and hilarity.
Okay, now, it's very interesting that Breitbart and Miller both bring up the whole Civil War thing, because this was back in 2010, 2011-ish, when the whole Occupy Wall Street movement was going on, which really, Occupy Wall Street is really the precursor to Anonymous and Antifa is the other one, and Antifa is the group I was blanking on. And I've said this before to people. Antifa's not really new. Antifa, from what I've observed, is mainly just Occupy Wall Street rebranded. And it's very interesting because we were starting to see the left go violent back in 2010, but Breitbart here really predicts all the chaos of what was to come from Occupy Wall Street, and then eventually after his death, of course, it would kind of merge and become what we now know as Black Bloc and Antifa and all those freaks. So, anyway.
And that's the thing about this, is that when people look at this, they start looking at these people and say, this is too funny. There are too many bizarre, goofy events. The way that they talk in their consensus with their twinkles up and twinkles down. The people, in the New York Times, heralding one kid who lost his virginity as presented to the tribe by an elder statesperson. I think that reminds me of the scene in Endless Love where her mother watched the unflowering. So it's just the bizarreness and the human spectacle and the funny stuff that's seen on TV. You just played Bang on the Drum. Right now, the biggest schism within this group of people who want to take over the world is the drummers versus the anarchists.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's going to be the revolution, I like our odds.
What do the first one to break out into some sort of violence, the Oakland one. Do you think they have a Harvey Keitel fixer character that is sent to the place where it's first to get violent? You say you see recurrent characters there. I'm wondering if they've sent their black ops guy up to Oakland. Why did that break out first in your eyes?
Nobody was paying attention to that. We had a stringer who was on the ground. I can't say what employ he was, but he's a pretty high up guy paying attention to what was going on live television. And it was violence and the group threatening the local television, which is sympathetic to their underlying political cause, but telling them they can't be there in a public park filming them going against the First Amendment. And then these people started to attack them and dog sick them. One reporter, whose first name is Amy, I forget her last name, Amy Holyfield, had a guy say, we kill white B-words like you around here. And they didn't even report that type of thing. The mainstream media does not want to cover the violent and scary nature of this thing because they weirdly sympathize with the soft,
Which is still even more true today. I mean, I'm not saying that Unite the Right wasn't bad. I was one of the first people in the conservative movement to denounce UTR 1 and 2 when things got out of hand. Obviously, the alt-right is a bunch of spurgs and idiots. But yeah, that's always been one thing that has really bothered me about the media. And I mean, obviously, I know how they work. It's not shocking to me, but it's almost like UTR was the perfect opportunity for them to, call out violence in the media and pretend to be outraged. Yet Antifa a few years ago was burning down Milo Yiannopoulos' book signing events and trying to cause all sorts of chaos at multiple other conservative events and being violent as well. And we never heard anything from the mainstream media on what they were doing. So let me take a moment to read a few chats. We have Russ B. Cook with 444. Same with Aaron 444. Nick DePaulo. Patient 0444. Okay, so since everyone's doing 444, this may be a good opportunity to do some self-plugging here, folks. As you can see on screen, yep, I've got it. I've got the right finger now. You can donate to PayPal. You can donate your 444 and help out the show at paypal.me/WhitfieldPod. That's kind of my substitute for Super Chat at the moment. And you can also subscribe to the audio podcast, and also if you wish to become a monthly supporter of the show, you can you can also contribute at anchor.fm/Whitfield Report. Okay, so your 444 remarks are noted, so just had to get a few plugs there. Let's see. But yeah, Breitbart and Miller were both spot on when they said that the left would, absolutely become completely violent. And this was back in 2010 before things really got chaotic.
Push towards a soft socialism. So they understand that there's going to be a few cracked eggs. But it wasn't just Oakland. We have been scanning the local news television feeds. We had riot police and bedlam in Albuquerque. There's been in San Francisco last night, the riot police were out. So it's not just in Oakland where things have gotten hinky.
The riot police in San Francisco, often initially mistaken at this time of the year for theme homosexuals going to a party.
Well, there's been a lot of body fluid exchanged at a lot of these Occupy things. So if you're young and experimental, there may be a place for you in the Occupy movement.
The big government piece, though, put a more... the subversive face on this, though. Crowdsource this. Emails expose Occupy Wall Street conspiracy to destabilize global markets and governments. When I look at the crowd, I don't sense it runs that deep. Is there somebody in there, though, in a planning tent, or somebody who's... are these the operatives you speak of that you see in a recurrent...
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say George Soros for... 200, Alex. Yeah.
Basis. That's the overall plan.
Well, look, the best laid plans of mice and people who have watched a lot of television and Simpsons episodes, and this is a group of people who have great aspirations, especially in the planning stages, and that's what the emails that we discovered showed. They included Rolling Stone reporter Matt Taibbi. They included Dylan Ratigan from MSNBC advising these people what they should do. We also discovered a New York Times reporter who got arrested on the Brooklyn Bridge in the Occupy Wall Street thing, consorting with the socialists and the anarchists, and they were talking very openly about escalating things into more illegal places, kind of like taking over banks and trying to confront the police. And I think that one of the dangerous things about having the socialists and the anarchists who have been involved in this type of stuff internationally, whether it be in Greece or anti-WTO.
Patient Zero with George Soros 201. Oh wait, that's The Price is Right. Damn it. Yeah, good line, Patience Zero. So yeah, I mean, going back to my earlier comment, this is nothing new. The mainstream media allying themselves with the far left to to basically bring down the country. And the media, you know, we all know, you know, what their agenda is. It's there's actually a great movie called Wag the Dog that I really recommend that you guys either rent that movie, or I think it, well, I'm not sure if it's on Netflix, but yeah, Wag the Dog is a really good movie, and I highly recommend it because it basically shows how the mainstream media works with the left and with the government to basically organize stories. But they do it. It's a comedy movie, and they do it in a satirical way, but it's satire mixed with truth. If Sam gets to 1K subs, that equals Soros money. That'll probably be true. Although anyone who has gone back and watched my previous stuff where I literally make fun of George Soros by just playing clips of Emperor Palpatine from Star Wars, because that's exactly what George Soros looks like, is Emperor Palpatine. So I don't know if Lucas was woke when he made that decision. I don't, obviously he's not woke anymore, but, or if that was just a happy coincidence, or if that was subliminal messaging. But, yeah. So please, folks, also subscribe and share this, and let's get to 1K, and then Owen can flip out and say, guys, the cripple is taking Soros money. He's with Whoosh and Bob Topaz, or however he mispronounces Royce's name. So let's see. Soros looks like H.R. Puffnoff. Yeah. No, Palpatine was wrong though. Yeah, but I mean, Jolly, look Palpatine up in Google Images. Obviously not right now, but look up Palpatine and then look up George Soros and tell me I'm not wrong. Okay. But anyway, yeah. Oh, hey, Count Cuckula. Damn, I almost called Cuckula Chocula. Then General Mills would be striking my channel. So yeah, this is almost over, but we'll wrap this segment with Miller up here.
Events is that these people have sophisticated plans that they've tried time and again on trying to provoke the police into getting them to fight them. And what they're doing is that they're taking those provocations off of the internet, and they're editing out that, and all you see is the police brutality, as they describe it, when they're the ones who are instigating for the purpose of trying to bring people into the movement based upon sympathy that the federal authorities have gotten out of control.
We're talking to Andrew Breitbart, who has bigger cojones, quite frankly, than the underdog balloon in the Macy's parade, founder and proprietor of Big Hollywood, Big Government, author of Righteous Indignation, Excuse Me While I Save the World. And if it does break out, look for Andrew with the Buford Pusser stick and fall in behind him. That's where I'm heading right away, because this is a courageous cat. Now, how's your life, baby? You good?
Okay, so basically the segment is over. So yeah, my point in playing that was the first time I think I had actually heard Breitbart on radio. Again, absolutely courageous guy. So then I'm more or less playing clips, ladies and gentlemen, from my timeline of how I discovered Breitbart. So I guess the second part of my education from Professor Andrew Breitbart from back in high school is this interview where he talked about how the Democrat media complex works. And the amazing thing about Breitbart's interviews is even today, he was so far ahead of his time that even today you can literally take any of Andrew's interviews about the mainstream media from 7 or 8 years ago, and obviously things have changed in terms of technology and blogs, and we were just beginning the age of social media and of Web 2.0, as they call it, when Breitbart.com launched. And yet, Breitbart was so far ahead of the curve, in terms of how the media works. Pretty much everything he describes on the new media is still relevant today. So, here is an excerpt from Andrew Breitbart's speech with the interview with the Hoover Institution, how Breitbart uncovered the Democrat media complex. Clip number 2, let's roll the tape.
Segment 4, the theory, of which you have more in this book than I'd expected. Righteous indignation. A lot gets explained here. Marx and Hegel had paved the way for the progressives, who in turn had paved the way for the Frankfurt School, who had then attacked the American way of life by pushing cultural Marxism through critical theory. There's a lot going on there. Very briefly, what's the Frankfurt School, and why should anyone watching this interview care?
Okay, first of all, anyone that reads this book is going to laugh, and they're going to cry, and they're going to get Andrew in all of his zany different multiple layers. But there's one chapter that is like putting the medicine in the sherbet in order to get your kid to take it, in order to get rid of his fever. And to me, my one discovery, my one great epiphany, my one aha moment that I said, I got it. I see what exactly happened with in this country. The Frankfurt School were emigres from
Germany, Austria.
Germany.
Mm-hmm.
It was the equivalent of this, the Hoover Institution. What the Hoover Institution is to Stanford University. The Frankfurt School was a think tank at the University of Frankfurt, and they were social scientists like Herbert Marcuse, Antonio Gramsci, Horkheimer, Adorno. These were all a bunch of guys in the middle of World War II who had suffered in Europe, 2 world wars in a row, and they had been fighting. They had been fighting the Nazis, and they were trying to figure out another aspect of how to how to spread Marxism around the world. You could go to Bolivia, you could go to Bulgaria, and you could go to the peasant class, and you could say, let's flip this place. The Marxist-Stallman argument of getting the workers to get upset at the owners was very easy, but not in America, where the middle class was invested in their productivity, invested in the concept that they could have their own small little American dream, a white picket fence, that they could invent something and go from one generation being dirt poor to being an owner within a very quick period of time. And what these guys figured out when they came to the United States, and Adorno is the one that drives me the most crazy. He came out to California, and I think it was Bertolt Brecht, the East German playwright, moved to Santa Monica in the 1940s at the height of the Golden Age. Think about this. These guys left Nazi Germany and Mussolini's Italy to come to California in the 1940s, and they lived by the beach, and they were depressed by the relentless cheeriness, the productivity, and the capitalism that they witnessed around them. And they came up with at the end of the day, we could call it cultural Marxism, but at the end of the day, we experience it on a day-to-day basis. And by that I mean a minute-by-minute, second-by-second basis. It's political correctness and it's multiculturalism. And what it...
Basically, cultural Marxism and what Breitbart is describing is pretty much the essence of what social justice warriors are. Obviously SJWs and that's the terminology that woke millennials such as myself use now. But basically, what Breitbart is describing back in 2011 or whenever this was is basically, SJWs, the Trigglypuffs of the world, the just screaming mad lunatics, the gender pronoun crap, the all all cis white males are bad. And by the way, I made the joke in ROTC in one of the Revenge of the Cis is streams earlier this week. Royce and Mersch were playing a clip of a woman on the New York subway system being asked to leave or asked to move because she was sitting in a handicapped zone. And here, I'll bring this full screen. I'll bring my camera back into view for a sec. They were playing a clip of this woman being asked to move in the subway, and basically this chick said no, and she cited a whole bunch of BS reasons, and she cited for female privilege, and I commented, I super chatted humorously that my cripple privilege would trump her woman privilege, but Mersch roasted me, kind of deservingly so, and made the observation, but yeah, you're straight and you're white and you're cis, so her woman privilege still trumps your crippled privilege, and that's the truth. Honestly, I mean, it's absurd, the social justice Olympics. Not only that, but I'm not sure if I've told this story before either, but during my senior year of high school, we were basically forced towards the end of the year to attend an all-day assembly held by Amnesty International. Yeah, I always blank on these organization names, but it was Amnesty International, and it was something having to do with like Awareness Day or something. I don't know. I get ADD when it comes to this social justice crap. I just tune out. But I remember the very first lecture of the morning. It was like 8 a.m. It was something having to do with rape culture. And I sat through that one barely. Of course, me being in Wilton, I'm always sitting, but whatever. I tolerated it. And I had my phone out and I was checking Twitter like every 5 seconds just to escape the boredom. Second lecture, I wasn't really paying attention either until this woman started sharing her story up on the stage at how she had been raped in college by a man that she knew. And she continued on, and I wasn't really paying attention up until she looked up from the stage into the crowd of seniors where we were all sitting, and specifically said to all of the senior boys, I quote, "And you guys are all potential rapists. Every single one of you is a potential rapist." Now, I just about lost my shit, and I was super tempted to scream something profane at her, but I didn't. I said I was going to leave, and at first security wouldn't let me leave, and I said, "You better let me leave, otherwise I am going to cause a scene here." And one of the guards who's a good guy, Vietnam era vet, and pretty reminiscent of the Clint Eastwood Gran Torino type character, who knew me pretty well at that point, basically said, "Let him through," and whispered to me and said, "Good for you for getting out of here, kid. I agree with you. It's bullshit." So, basically, I went to the student newspaper office where I was one of the editors for our school newspaper, and basically for the rest of the day, I watched Netflix and basically played hooky while being in school still. And nobody noticed I was gone after a while. But my point in telling that tale is basically to show that, yeah, this social justice warrior crap has gone on for far too long. And that was back in 2013. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I should have said something, but it was the end of the year, pretty much, and I didn't want to get. I was like, fuck it, I'll be out of here in a few weeks anyway. So better to ditch and go watch The Sopranos or whatever I was watching for the rest of the day. So anyway. That was my little tangent. So, but yeah, Breitbart's talking about the rise of cultural Marxism in pop culture, and that was a real life application of all that shit going down. So let's resume that clip.
Book was this amazing concept of e pluribus unum, where everybody comes here and contributes to this, everybody becomes an American and contributes, but we have a common culture, we have a common border, a common mindset. What they did was take the haves versus have-nots friction and translated it into oppressor versus the oppressed. And
this got taken up by faculties across the country.
That's
the point of the Frankfurt School and the progressivism. It becomes embraced by 60s
post-structuralism
academics.
Post-structuralism, queer studies, African American studies, all of that is pitting people against each other. It is anti-American to its core.
If Marcuse was I'm quoting again from Righteous Indignation, if Marcuse was the Jesus of the New Left, then Saul Alinsky was his St. Paul. Again, let me just put it to you in simple terms. Who's Saul Alinsky, and why should anyone watching this interview care?
Well, Hillary Clinton wrote her senior thesis on Saul Alinsky at Wellesley. Barack Obama is an acolyte of Saul Alinsky. He created the concept of community organizing, and what he did, as I argue in this book, is he took all of this ethereal claptrap, this Noam Chomsky-like jargon that the average person couldn't understand.
Herbert Marcuse is very hard to read.
Right, it's all impossible to read. But he was able to translate this cultural Marxist down to a series of rules and a mindset, a warrior mindset, where the critical theory was like, take on your enemy, take him directly on, destroy that person. He applied critical theory down to the street war level, and I would argue that the Katie Courics of the world, the Chris Matthews of the world, Rachel Maddow, and Keith Olbermann, unbeknownst even to themselves, are studied in the tactics of Alinsky.
So, that in a nutshell was one of the first, this was when I was really diving into what Breitbart was all about. And so I actually saw that video after that whole, assembly speech that I mentioned to you. And it all clicked. I understood what was going on. Now, the one thing I've also always admired about Breitbart was from the very beginning, he was never one of these conservatives who was like, oh, well, we have to be, polite and respectful to those on the left, and we have to roll over, and we have to show that we're, the intellectual, that we're, we can't stoop to their level, and, we must always be nice and kind and gentle. We can never be hostile or anything, and, Breitbart was the type of guy who was willing to meet them head on, and he never stooped to their level, but he was never afraid to get his hands dirty either. And that was one thing I always admired about him. He was a street warrior. He was a happy warrior indeed, but he knew that the left was declaring war on us. And declaring war on average Americans, and he said enough with this fucking bullshit. We need to declare war on them. And this was one of his first speeches where he talked how the left has declared war on us. Also, Fizz gig with the is there a Dell around here? I'll get into leftists posing as right-wingers in a little bit here, which is why I'm glad that Johnny Arcade is here too, because Breitbart had something to say about left-wingers posing as right-wingers too. So he had something to say about Glenn Beck. Andrew definitely had something to say, but we'll save that for later, because it's going to get good. So, but anyway, here's Breitbart's speech on how the left declared war on us first.
On it. What is wrong out there? We have done nothing wrong other than to do what they have done for years, and that is protest. And they think that we should sit down and shut up, and that is ending right now. Is there anyone here? Maybe I'm prone to hyperbole. I'm going to ask you another question. Is there anyone here in this room, raise your hand, I'm dead serious with you, that doesn't think that the institutional left has declared war on you? Does this feel a little bit different than the Democratic Party of our youth, of my parents' Democratic Party, of the Democratic Party that I was a member of in 1992 and 1993, and I finally said enough is enough? This is insane what we're experiencing here. And the mainstream media, as they're losing subscribers and as they're losing viewers, they're doubling down on the Democratic Party, they're doubling down on thuggery, they're doubling down on spending on absurdity. It's almost as if they're intentionally trying to turn us into Greece. But, I mean, not the summer lovers Greece that you've seen on pay cable. The bad Greece that's in debt right now. So last night, I'm telling you, everywhere I go, trouble. I swear to God this is true. And I'm going to end.
This is another thing that Breitbart was famous for. Owen Benjamin thinks he's a comedian, but Breitbart could have easily done stand-up because his mannerisms and the way he told stories were actually funny and actually humorous as well.
On this note, because there has to be a governor or an ex-governor back there waiting for me to end. Okay? I went to Harvard last night, and the night before, I was to speak to a group at the Harvard School of Government on propaganda and politics. You should have seen me. I was writhing on the desk in front of these people in like voodoo writhing pain, like, propaganda, I'll show you propaganda. Congressman Istuk, former Congressman Istuk was the person who invited me. He's a fellow there. He's teaching. And he said, Andrew, I want to take you to a speech that's being given over at the School of Government. You've seen it on C-SPAN when they have it, very official, C-SPAN cameras all over the place, rows and rows and rows of people, about 200 people. I walk in, I swear I had no idea that the new president of the AFL-CIO would be there, Richard Trumka, and that he would be introduced by former head of the AFL-CIO, John Sweeney. And he takes me into a green room, and we're just standing there, Sweeney, Trumka, Breitbart, Istuk, and this is true, a photographer by the name of Martha Stewart. Not the Martha Stewart, but her name was Martha Stewart. And I said, this is so unbelievably awkward. I wish I could, just say to Sweeney and Trump, I go, please admit that this is awkward. This is so awkward. I'm at war with you guys. But we decided to make small talk, and I sat down, and I said, Andrew, be good. And I put my hands underneath my cheeks, and I said, Andrew, this is his special day. This is Richard Trumka's special day. Don't say anything. And so I got up there, and I started to listen to him say, the other side's racist, we're good. The other side's homophobic, we're good. The other side's violent, we're good. Father Coughlin, Glenn Beck, they're racist, we're good. And I'm dizzy, and I'm like, is he really going down this road with me sitting here? Does he think I'm going to keep sitting on my hands? And so after he spoke, I made a beeline and I got in front of there and I said, hey, the only racism that exists out there on camera is you guys intimidating us, going after us on race, and you guys attacking us. I offered $100,000 to anyone that can show video that the N-word was hurled once. I told that to him and he said, I was there, I saw it. Do you understand for the last 2 weeks we've been trying to find any witness? And I traveled to Boston, I turn around the corner, and there he is. There's the only witness to it in the world, the head of the AFL-CIO. I totally trust him. Here's how I want to end it. They declared war on us. We did not declare war on them.
Yep, absolutely true.
I've been very impressed with how the Republicans behaved over the last 6 months and not giving a single vote to that toxic, illegal, unconstitutional, and violently shoved upon us racist document, or whatever you want to call it. Nobody's read it, so. We have an obligation to fight back. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to take on the institutional left. They took over the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party did not have the backbone to fight these type of hardball violent tactics. We cannot allow for our country to have the same thing. Please join the fight. Thank you very much.
Yep. Not to get off on another tangent. Oh hell, we might go off on one anyway. But as I've always said, I believe that the actual Democrat Party, the actual true liberals, died. The Democrat Party of Decency died the day that Kennedy was assassinated. If you look, ever since LBJ came into power, and since then, the Democrat Party has become more left. LBJ was a avowed racist. In 50 years we'll have all those niggers voting Democrat. That's not me saying that, YouTube, so don't flag me. That's LBJ. And so you want to talk about JFK conspiracies? I know we have a couple of them, but honestly, I do think that perhaps maybe the Russians or the commies got to JFK or something along those lines. So maybe we ought to have a JFK show one of these days. I might have to put that up as a Twitter poll at some point. Let's see. Yeah, Johnny says I don't remember very decent. Yeah, well, it was after. It was well after. This was like well before any of this audience was born, with the exception of maybe. Well, yeah, I think everyone in this audience was born post JFK's assassination, I would assume. So yeah, none of us remember the days with decent Democrat Party. They would all basically be conservative or like right-wing people. So yeah. Let's see. What else do I have in the Breitbart tin? Oh, I know. It's time to talk about backstabbing conservatives, namely Glenn Beck. Now, full disclosure, I have actually met Glenn Beck, and I've actually shaken hands with Glenn Beck before, but that was back when I was a senior in high school, and Glenn Beck at the time was still on Fox, and he was still he hadn't gone off the rails yet, and also I was young and naive, and I thought Glenn Beck's whole feel-good approach to he was kind of like a civil rights MLK dude, or trying to do that at the time. So in my youth, I thought that Glenn Beck was a decent guy at the time, up until I talked to some people who I'm not going to name for the sake of keeping their identities private. But I've talked to people since then who have actually worked with Glenn Beck, and they say he's not a very ethical dude. So basically, Glenn Beck was kind of like Owen Benjamin, and only his cult was way bigger. But Breitbart, in his wisdom, was on to Glenn Beck way before most of us were. So here's a radio interview with Andrew Breitbart talking about how Glenn Beck screwed him over. I know Merch played a clip similar to this last night on Nightwave. This one is a little bit more in depth. I'm not going to play the whole thing because it's 20 minutes long. But I'll play a good portion of it because I think it is pretty revealing. So this is one called Glenn Beck Goes Off on Coward Liar Glenn Beck. He's dead to me.
Andrew, let's shift topics. We've got a couple of minutes left in this segment. I know you've got to jump, but I want to go to, besides on your website, the resignation from GoPro was big enough news. Glenn Beck made a very disturbing comment on an analogy or analysis he was doing of Newt Gingrich versus President Obama. Can you walk people through what Glenn Beck said and then what I believe you posted last night on your website?
He was on Judge Napolitano's show on Fox, and the self-appointed historian of the conservative movement and autodidact who's read a lot of books over the last few years, decided to impart his assessment of Newt Gingrich that he was a progressive, that he cited Teddy Roosevelt as a progressive, Gingrich that is, and that Gingrich's actions and attitudes towards government and appreciation of Teddy Roosevelt means that Newt Gingrich is a progressive, just like Barack Obama. And so if Barack Obama is a progressive and Newt Gingrich is a progressive, yet the Tea Party is going to side with a progressive and Newt Gingrich, then he can only see the only reason why they would side with Newt Gingrich over Barack Obama is because of the issue of race. He played the race card.
You're saying that he actually was a race baiter. He actually said that if you look at what these two guys stand for, they're both big government progressives, so ergo...
And this was actually kind of when I started to think, something's not right with Beck. Exactly what Andrew's talking about. I mean, Newt Gingrich might not be the most exciting guy in the Republican Party, but he's certainly not a racist. So yeah. Also, I turned the volume down on the clip. So yeah, like this was right around the time I started to kind of figure out that Glenn Beck was a fraud. I also really figured out that Beck was a fraud because when I met him, I told him that I had my own show and he wanted to get my card, so I gave him my card at the time. Said he was interested in talking to me, and then a few months, like about a month or so later, I heard through the grapevine that Beck thought I was too right-wing for what he was doing with GBTV at the time. But then he had no problem hiring Tommy Lahren on the Blaze just a few years later. Now, granted, I'm obviously, I'm kind of a scraggly dude with like a beard. I get that. I don't have as much sex appeal as Tommy Lahren. Okay, I get that. But still, I had been doing a show for at least 6 years at that point when I met Beck. Tommy just, from what I understand, she literally walked into the Blaze or whatever it's called and got the job right off the bat. So yeah. No, Johnny. Yeah, that's what I was just saying. I know that Tommy is way hotter than me, but she doesn't have my brain. She doesn't have my brains. So, no, she's not. No, she's not a cyborg. But I could cyborg her. Take that what you will. Take from that what you will.
You like Gingrich as a Republican or as a conservative? It must be because of the color of his skin.
Well, that's exactly what he said. And Judge Napolitano, there are a lot of Beck supporters. In the past, Beck has made mistakes, and his supporters come out and try to defend him because Beck is a coward and will not defend himself when he makes a mistake or lies about a person.
Hold it. I want to go back over this. You're saying Glenn Beck's a coward, Glenn Beck's a liar, and you're saying that Glenn Beck steals material from people?
Oh, yes. I mean, this is well documented, and whenever he does it, he never answers to the charges. He's a coward. He will not have me on the radio show. He won't have himself on me on GBTV. He refused to have me on Fox when he threw me under the bus during the charade thing. I asked to be on TV or radio to explain why he had it wrong. Months later, we found out why he wouldn't have me on is because he lied to his audience on television that he didn't do the Sherrod story. In fact, on his radio show, he attacked Shirley Sherrod, took the 2-minute and 30-second video that we had on Breitbart TV and on Big Government, and he attacked her throughout the morning. That when he went on TV, he later found out.
Now, this story seems eerily familiar. Granted, it happened beforehand, but I seem to remember there was a guy named through said bears who were loyal to him at the time under the bus, and then basically when things were too late, he said that he was the one who exposed Eric Nimmer and tried to take credit for it. So basically the ex-Bears got Sherroded. Shirley Sherroded, yeah. We got Becked in this case. So yeah. I feel like every time someone says never, she should just go crazy like in Pee Wee Herman's Playhouse. Well, I'm not even sure Pee Wee Herman is that crazy. More like whenever I hear Nimmer, I get the visual picture of Flavor Flav in my head whenever Nimmer pops up. If you say Nimmer 5 times fast, Flavor Flav will just magically appear in your house and go, "Yeah, boy," or whatever he does. So someone tweet me that too. If there are any good Flavor Flav memes, feel free to tweet those at me.
Had he read my article, he would have seen that I wrote, eventually her basic humanity informs her to help the white farmer, and that this article was about the NAACP, but he jumped the gun, and in essence jumped the shark, and attacked her mercilessly. In order to rectify the situation, he went on TV and tried to pretend like he was above the fray, and told O'Reilly to his face a lie, that he had the prescience to see the video and realize that there was a context missing, and therefore he avoided the pitfall and didn't do the story. We later found out in our investigation, because we're being sued by Shirley Sherrod, that Glenn Beck eviscerated her and in fact selectively edited the audio into 15-second clips to make it appear what he wanted it to appear like. And we called him on it, and he will not answer to it. He also has historically been found to take countless bloggers' content to turn it into book gold, to turn it into chalkboard gold, his infamous chalkboards. Much of them were taken from websites like Big Government, Virum Serum. Matthew Boyle at the Daily Caller chronicled dozens of examples of him taking stuff without credit. He will not answer to the charges, and his minions online like to defend him. And in the case of this one, Glenn Beck is, they're trying to say that he was being facetious when he said that the Tea Party is racist, or the Tea Party must be driven by race considerations in supporting Newt Gingrich.
Let me ask you something.
So, like I said, I'm not going to play this whole clip, but just to sum it up, Glenn Beck was throwing conservatives under the bus, and he was stealing content from other conservative news sites like Big Government and like Breitbart.com and the Daily Caller. So I think you guys see my comparison. So make of that what you will. All I know is that I've seen some people saying that if Breitbart were here, he would not want you punching right. That's the message that I've gotten from some people online. People are always asking, well, why are you going after people like Owen Benjamin, or he's a fellow conservative. No, he's not. So, and we've pretty much proven that. Breitbart was, granted, Breitbart did want to go after the left, and he was pretty, he was pretty strict on hammering them, but he was also, pretty diligent about calling out, Trojan horses as well, and Beck was one of them. So, take what you will from that clip. That's my take on this. So, we're almost at an hour 15 minutes. I don't want to take up too much more time, because granted it is getting late, although this hour has just flown by fast. So, to answer the big question, was Breitbart murdered? I don't really know. There are moments in time where I think that he was murdered, because obviously the timing of when his CPAC speech was and him saying that we have documents on Obama, that does seem suspicious. However, there are people like Larry O'Connor who worked for Breitbart from day one alongside Andrew and was one of Breitbart's closest friends. This was what he had to say about Breitbart's death the day after Breitbart passed away. This was on Larry O'Connor's old show from Blog Talk Radio, which I used to tune into a couple times. So this was Larry O'Connor on Andrew Breitbart's death. This is what he had to say. He said that Breitbart's death was of natural causes, and you'll hear some of the reactions that he had to this. And so I'm going to play this for you, and take from it what you will. Clip number 4. Roll the tape.
It was overwhelming. So I do want to get to your calls. I want to hit one article here first and get that out of the way, because a lot of people, a lot of good, sane, rational friends of mine who I know and respect have pulled me aside if they've seen me personally, or sent me emails or sent me messages saying, geez, what do you think really happened here? And, they got him, didn't they? They got him. And here's the deal, guys. I know exactly what you all know, which is, in the coroner's office confirmed today that this was definitely heart-related. And I think that it's been made somewhat public now that this is not the first incident that Andrew had with his heart. Now, a lot of people have said, we heard that Andrew's father also had heart conditions, and maybe this was a hereditary thing. Please understand that Andrew is adopted, so the fact that his father had heart problems is not connected to this at all, obviously. But there's one thing in particular that I really want to address, and that is this whole idea that he was in some way targeted because he has been dealing with this very volatile and dangerous information, and that he has all these enemies who are, trying to get him because of these tapes that he said he had at CPAC. And most specifically, I want to address this again. I'm not going to say who is saying it, and I'm not saying the website because they don't deserve it. And let me put it this way. Let me start this out by saying this. Anything that you see or hear on the radio or see on the internet out there that has stuff that they think is in some way validated and in some way backs up the idea that Andrew was the victim of some nefarious, horrible plot. I guarantee you, I am telling you right now, I guarantee you unambiguously that not one of those people that are on the radio and not one of those people who have written anything on the internet has spoken to anybody that actually knows the facts. They have not spoken to Andrew's family. They have not spoken to Andrew's closest work associates. I know this for a fact. So you need to understand that and put that in perspective when you read all of these things, all of this inside information. Let me tell you something. There are probably 6 people in this world who have any kind of inside information, and none of them have spoken to any of these people. Now, let me just nail this thing down right now, because this is the thing that has been most provocative, and this is the thing that so many people have been hammering on, and that is this quote of Andrew Breitbart saying, "Wait till they see what happens March 1st. I understand. That sounds so creepy, right? Let me read this. In a stunning coincidence, it appears Andrew Breitbart suffered his untimely death just hours before he was set to release damning video footage that could have sunk Barack Obama's 2012 re-election campaign." Okay, that entire paragraph is a fairy tale, an absolute fairy tale. Moving on. Around 3 weeks ago, on February 9th, during the Blog Bash event in Washington, D.C., Breitbart made a prophetic comment that takes on a somewhat chilling nature given the fact that he died in the early hours of March 1st. Speaking to Lawrence Sinclair of Sinclair News, Breitbart stated, "Wait till they see what happens March 1st. Now, Andrew did say, wait till they see what happens March 1st. Andrew Breitbart said that. Let me go on. Now, I want you to hear this sentence really clearly, because this, we expect this from left-wing media. So we're kind of used to looking for how sentences are constructed. Listen to how this sentence is constructed. It's almost certain that Breitbart was referring to his plan to release damning footage of President Obama that he had been promising to reveal throughout the month of February. That is a heck of a statement. It's almost certain that Breitbart was referring to. Really? Now, who did this writer research that with to make sure that it is almost certain? What could he have possibly been saying when he said, wait till they see what happens on March 1st? I'll give you a hint. There's nothing in this article that I'm reading that says anything about the fact that he has been pouring all of his heart and all of his soul and all of his resources into a complete and total radical redesign of his websites. And guess what the completion date was? Guess what the date was that the designers had to contractually adhere to? Go ahead. Take a guess. Why, that would be March 1st.
Larry is, of course, referring to the redesign that happened on Breitbart.com, which hasn't changed since 2012 too much. But if you go back to pre-redesign, Breitbart kind of looked like the Drudge Report. It was just mainly on a white background. Yeah. Shoney brings up a good point. Andrew told Podesta to off himself long before Podesta's emails were released. So, yeah, that's a good point, too.
Anything that Andrew said over the last month about ramping up toward March 1st, about what was going to happen March 1st or the first week of March, it was all about his site. He is so excited for you to see his site. One other thing. Andrew was right. There is a story that involves video, and it involves President Obama during his university days. But this sentence here that describes it, damning video footage that could have sunk Barack Obama's 2012 re-election campaign. Andrew never said that. He never characterized the videotapes that way, ever. What he said at CPAC, I was there, I was in the room, it's on video, go look at it. What he said was, we are going to vet this president in the way the mainstream media didn't do in 2008. There was no big government then. There was no big Hollywood then. There was no big journalism then. Andrew Breitbart's sites launched 2 weeks before Barack Obama was inaugurated. The entire vetting process just went by without any comment. Andrew had nothing to say about it. He made it clear to all of us that this was our time. This was our opportunity to finally vet this man. And it would begin with this story. Furthermore, in the last editorial meeting that Mr. Breitbart had with his staff, we talked about all of the stories that we had to launch this new site with. Now let me ask you something. If he had damning video footage that would have sunk Barack Obama's 2012 re-election campaign, first of all, do you think he would have waited? No, he might have. But secondly, don't you think that's what he would have run on the day the sites launched? Well, you'll have to tune in to see if that's what our number one story is when we launch the sites. Anyone who is repeating this stuff, who is passing it on, who is saying, oh, look what he said, oh, this is, they went after him because of this, they're just really low. And they're being disrespectful. And it bothers me quite a bit. It really bothers me because I'm hearing this stuff from people who are friends. And none of the people who went public with this and published this stuff and went on the radio and said these things or speculated about these things, none of them have called or emailed to ask. None of them.
So I can understand Larry's frustration. Certainly. That was why when I interviewed Ben Shapiro, and unfortunately I couldn't find the clip of this in my library, so I might have to pull that up in a future episode. But that was one of the first things I asked, was whether or not he thought that Breitbart passed away of natural cause or he was assassinated. Ben told me, and this was back in 2013 when I interviewed him, that Breitbart had a heart condition, that he was adopted, so no one knew of this heart condition. So he said that the chances of Breitbart being assassinated were highly unlikely in his opinion, and that there was no way. Is it possible, in my opinion, that he could have been assassinated, through like a heart attack gun? Sure. Could he have had a heart attack and just died of natural causes? That was entirely possible too. At this point, he was also really going hard at Occupy Wall Street and screaming at leftists, confronting them, all which is very stressful, physically. And, he could have been killed. He could have worked himself up into a frenzy. And, bottom line, the fact that he passed away at such a young age was tragic. Just as a whole. And we're going to miss him. I still miss him. And, but yet, because of his work, I feel inspired to continue doing what I do. I really do feel that podcasting is what I've been called to do. And so, I'm going to keep on fighting the good fight for as long as I can. And I want to thank each and every one of you who have joined the Savage Sam crew, which, by the way, that's not even my nickname. I'm not even the one who came up with that. I've got to give credit to, I believe, Joshua Rogers Sr. Came up with that term. And I know I said Savage Sam. I didn't say asshole. But anyway, I want to thank all of you who have joined the Savage Sam community, and just thanks to all of you who have joined. And we're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep exposing the left. So anyway, folks, I want to leave you with one final moment for Andrew Breitbart. This was what a stand-up guy he was, and really showed his character and who he was, how he was just willing to, stand beside anyone who was willing to fight for the truth with him. And, he was just an awesome guy. So this was a deleted scene from Hating Breitbart. I wish they had included this in the movie, but this really speaks to his character.
I had one moment where the Acorn thing started, and you can talk to Doug Giles. He didn't know me from Adam, and I talked to him for about 4 hours on the phone in Quincy, Illinois. When you guys were you there inside of the bar, and the first night that we got there, and I get a phone call. She goes, "This is my daughter." He goes, "I'm trusting you with her." I go, "I get it, sir." I said, "I'm going to treat her like she's my daughter." And that's like when sources come to me, instead of going to the New York Times or to the New York Times that have vast resources, they're coming to this goofball who works out of a basement most of the time in West Los Angeles, and all I can do is tell my sources or the parents of my sources that I'm going to march with them, and whatever their peril is will be my peril. And if I have to act like a rodeo clown to divert attention from them so that they're protected, I'll do it. And that's one of the reasons why I think people come to me, is because they know that I'm not just using and abusing them, that I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I'm going to fight with them, next to them, and protect them as much as humanly possible.
Andrew was indeed a absolutely stand-up guy. He's still remembered, and his practices are still utilized by at least some of us. I get that there are a lot of people who have glommed onto the conservative movement as a cash grab, and who have glommed onto the MAGA train to boost their popularity. But I'd like to think that I've stayed true to my roots, and I want to thank all of you who have joined in on this fun adventure that we call the Whitfield Report. I also want to thank the gentleman who PayPal'd me $5. I don't know if you wanted your name announced, so I'll keep your name anonymous. There was no message, so thanks for that. Anyway, folks, I want to thank you all for tuning into the program. From all of us here at NGC Studios, have a good night. God bless, and God save this great nation. God bless Andrew Breitbart, and rest in peace. I never got to meet you in this life, but I hope to meet you in the next life, and maybe have a few beers with you, sir. So until next time, folks, God bless, and God save this great nation.